Now, across the globe, young people are rising up like never before. From hashtags to street marches, Gen Z is organizing, mobilizing and uniting across borders to demand change. From Madagascar to Morocco and Nepal to Kenya, youths are making their mark through a powerful wave of protests for change. In Madagascar, deadly demonstrations erupted over worsening power outages and water shortages, basic services that the government has struggled to provide. The protests are testing the country's leadership, whose hold on power is once again under pressure. Elsewhere in Africa, Morocco is investing billions of dollars in football infrastructure as it prepares to co-host the 2030 FIFA World Cup. Now, this includes a massive new stadium and renovation of several existing venues. But this spending has sparked public protests, with many young people arguing that their more urgent needs, such as healthcare and education, are being ignored in favour of sports facilities. Aman Kumar Himanshu reports on a generation that refuses to stay silent.
In recent months, a trend of youth taking to the streets in Global South has been observed. This wave of youth-led protests has shook governments to their core and toppled leaders in some countries. Sri Lanka in 2022, Bangladesh in 2024, Mongolia in May 2025, Kenya in June, Indonesia in August, and Nepal in September. A new name has been added to this list: Madagascar. Madagascar is an island nation located off the eastern coast of Africa. On 29th of September, President Andry Rajoelina dissolved the government following protests over issues of electricity and water shortages. Unrest has gripped the capital Antananarivo for days. The government imposed dusk to dawn curfews in a bid to control the chaos, but large crowds continued to flood the streets. Police used tear gas and rubber bullets to disperse the demonstrators. The United Nations said that the violence claimed nearly 24 lives and injured more than 100. In a nationally televised address, President Rajoelina acknowledged the outrage of young people. He said, and I quote, "I understand the anger, the sadness and the difficulties caused by power cuts and water supply problem. I heard the call. I felt the suffering. I understood the impact on daily life." Unquote. He then dismissed the Prime Minister and Cabinet Ministers. He said that interim ministers will remain in post until a new government is appointed in the coming days.
Pursuant to Article 54 of the Constitution, I have decided to terminate the functions of the Prime Minister and the government. While waiting for the formation of the new government, those in place will ensure the interim. During the next 3 days, we will receive the names of the Prime Minister. Then after his appointment, a deadline will be given to him for the composition of the government.
President Rajoelina pledged to find solutions to the country's crisis and expressed readiness to meet the young activists leading the demonstrations. But it did not satisfy the protesters, who drew inspiration from Gen Z demonstrations in Nepal and Kenya. Protesters said that the sacking of the government was small victory. They wanted change, the rule of law and justice for all.
C'est notre objectif et pour y atteindre, je pense.
I think that this movement is the way to change the system. We need to rearrange things because it's this system that makes it easier for power to be monopolized by a certain group of people who only care about their own well-being.
A chorus of protesters now called for the president's resignation. On 30th of September, youths marched in the capital, waving placards with messages such as "We need water, we need electricity, Rajoelina out." The protesters adopted a pirate flag from the Japanese anime series One Piece as their rallying symbol. This logo was also used recently by youth-led anti-regime protests in Nepal, Indonesia, the Philippines and France.
For us, the Gen Z and Katsu University, President Rajoelina's response is not acceptable. Therefore, the dismissal of the government is not enough for us. We demand the resignation of the president and the cleaning up of the National Assembly, which is from the same party as the president.
Here's how it all started. The demonstrations erupted on Thursday in response to worsening power and water shortages, alongside deepening frustration over poverty. Initially peaceful, the marches in the capital descended into violent clashes, with the police looting and arson. The homes of politicians close to the president were attacked. In a matter of days, the unrest had spread to 8 other cities. Explosions and screams rang out as large police contingents backed by armored vehicles dispersed crowds with tear gas and rubber bullets, while smoke rose from fires lit in the streets. Organizers who mobilized support through social media said that they had been inspired by youth-led movements in Kenya, Nepal and Morocco. Demonstrators even adopted a protest flag, which was first used in Nepal earlier this month.
They say we are a TikTok generation, a generation of idiots. And when we rise up, they don't let us speak out about the country's problems.
The student protesters were all dressed in black in line with a call on social media to mourn those killed. In the main, frustration reached boiling point over poverty and failing basic services. Madagascar is the leading producer of vanilla and has natural resources in farming, forestry, fishing and minerals. But it remains one of the poorest countries in the world. According to World Bank, more than 75% of its 28 million people live below the international poverty line of $3 per person per day. Blackouts and water shortages are not new to the island, but their increasing frequency and duration have severely disrupted daily life. Some areas were without electricity for more than 12 hours, and people's frustrations spilled into the streets.
Mon ras-le-bol et le ras-le-bol de tous les Malgaches.
I'm fed up, and so are all the Malagasy people, with power cuts, water cuts, and above all the confiscation of rights and power in the hands of a certain population. I think that, as citizens, we have a duty to demonstrate.
D'une certaine frange de la population.
The demonstrations might be the handiwork of Gen Z, but the grievances have been decades in the making. Since gaining independence from France in 1960, Madagascar has been rocked by multiple uprisings. Andry Rajoelina, a former mayor of Antananarivo, came to power on the back of a coup that ousted the country's president at the time. He rose to prominence by leading a wave of rallies against the then government. Those protests channeled growing public anger towards what we saw as an increasingly authoritarian regime and ultimately forced the president to step down. Rajoelina, backed by young people, seized power and became Africa's youngest president. Ironically, for a man who rose to power on the back of a youth protest, it is young people who are seeking his ouster today. The same people who once rallied behind him are now filling the Antananarivo streets, demanding his resignation. After not contesting the 2013 election because of international pressure, Rajoelina was voted back into office in 2018 and re-elected in 2023 in contested elections boycotted by the opposition. After the latest protest broke out, he invited applications for a new prime minister. An appeal by him urging candidates for ministerial posts to send in a curriculum vitae by mail or by LinkedIn was widely mocked on social media. This trend of youth-led protests is not unique to Madagascar. In northwestern Africa, a similar violent Gen Z protest erupted in Morocco. Demonstrators clashed with police in 11 different cities over corruption and the government's misplaced priorities. Hundreds of young Moroccans took to the streets and criticized the government for spending heavily on international sporting events while neglecting health and education. Protesters linked the struggling health system to preparations for the 2030 FIFA World Cup. They were shouting slogans such as "Stadiums are here, but where are the hospitals?" Morocco is building at least 3 new stadiums and renovating or expanding at least half a dozen others. It will also host the Africa Cup of Nations later this year. Unlike past protests led by unions or political parties, the rallies in Moroccan cities were largely organized through social media platforms such as TikTok and gaming app Discord. The protest won additional backing from Morocco's star goalkeeper Yassine Bono and its most famous rapper El Grande Toto. But two groups, Gen-Z 21 and Morocco Youth Voices, urged peaceful and civilized protest and responsible debate, even as many supporters voiced more militant demands.
Young people are demanding schools and hospitals. What they are asking for is not impossible. These are necessities in Morocco. How can the authorities not understand this? Where is the government in all this? Where is the head of the Moroccan government, who does nothing but talk? Young people have demands that are vital for Morocco, particularly in terms of hospitals and schools.
We don't want football or anything else. If football had been good for us, it would have been introduced long ago and would have benefited young people. We want health. Our parents are suffering.
Protests in Morocco have historically focused on regional inequalities and government priorities. But the most recent protests reflected a nationwide anger. The unrest swelled after 8 women died giving birth in a public hospital at Agadir in capital Rabat. The 2023 World Health Organization data showed that Morocco had only 7.7 medical professionals per 10,000 inhabitants and far fewer in certain regions, including Agadir. In Morocco, people born between 1995 and 2010 make up the largest share of the population, and the weekend demonstrations were referred to as Gen-Z protests. Morocco's youth have also drawn inspiration from Nepal, where youth-led protests have channeled widespread anger over the lack of opportunities, corruption and nepotism. The protests unfolding in Madagascar and Morocco raise a serious question. When governments fail to respond to the needs of their people, especially the youth, what other choice do citizens have but to take to the streets? These movements have not only channeled policies, but the very legitimacy of the government behind them. For Gen Z, protest is no longer just an act of defiance. It's a form of participation, a demand to be heard in societies that too often ignore them. Whether governments see this as a threat or a wake-up call may well shape the political future of entire nations. Aman Kumar Himanshu reports for DD India.